Master the art of Stoic emotional detachment, command power. Part 2. How manipulators gain control of your mind. The most dangerous prison has no walls. Imagine a prison so invisible that the people trapped inside don't even realize they are prisoners. No bars, no guards, no locked doors. And yet millions live inside it every day. The prison is emotional dependency, and the guards are the people who know how to exploit it. Most people believe control looks obvious. They imagine dictators, tyrants, bullies, people issuing commands. But the most effective control rarely looks like control. It looks like influence. It looks like approval. It looks like affection. It looks like attention. It looks like love. This is why emotional manipulation is so powerful. People rarely recognize it while it's happening. They simply notice the symptoms: anxiety, confusion, overthinking, self-doubt, emotional exhaustion, the feeling of constantly chasing something that remains just out of reach. And by the time they realize what happened, they have already surrendered enormous power. The Stoics understood something modern psychology continues to confirm. Whoever controls your emotions eventually influences your decisions. Whoever influences your decisions eventually influences your life. This is why emotional detachment is not merely about peace. It is about freedom. And freedom becomes impossible when someone else has access to your emotional controls. The hook that catches almost everyone. Manipulators rarely begin with pain. They begin with pleasure. This is where most people make a critical mistake. They assume danger arrives looking dangerous. Usually, it doesn't. It arrives looking desirable. The narcissist doesn't start by insulting you. The manipulator doesn't begin by controlling you. The toxic person doesn't immediately reveal their intentions. Instead, they offer what you crave most: attention, validation, admiration, affection, understanding. They study your emotional hunger. Then they feed it. This is why emotionally neglected people often become vulnerable. Not because they are weak, but because hunger creates blindness. A starving person doesn't inspect food carefully. They simply want relief. The same principle applies emotionally. When people are desperate for love, approval, or connection, they often ignore warning signs. Their need becomes stronger than their judgment. The Stoics warned repeatedly about this. Anything you need desperately becomes capable of controlling you, because desperation clouds perception. You stop seeing reality. You start seeing possibility. You stop seeing behavior. You start seeing potential. You stop seeing who someone is. You start seeing who you hope they become. And that is where manipulation begins. Why intermittent rewards are so powerful. There is a reason casinos make billions. There is a reason social media becomes addictive. There is a reason toxic relationships become difficult to leave. All three operate on a similar principle: unpredictable rewards. The human brain becomes intensely focused when rewards become inconsistent. If someone treats you badly all the time, eventually you leave. But if they alternate between affection and distance, kindness and coldness, attention and silence, then confusion begins. And confusion creates attachment. The victim starts chasing certainty. They remember the good moments. They wait for the affection to return. They become emotionally invested in solving the puzzle. This is why many people remain trapped in unhealthy relationships long after they recognize the damage. They are no longer attached to the person. They are attached to the possibility of things returning to how they once were, the possibility of finally receiving consistent love, the possibility of emotional relief. And manipulators often exploit this without mercy. The Stoics would immediately identify the solution. Detach from outcomes. Observe actions, not promises, not potential, not possibilities. Action, because reality reveals itself through behavior, not words, not intention, behavior. The weapon of reaction. Most people think power comes from speaking. The Stoics often found power in restraint. Consider how easily people can predict your behavior when they understand your emotional triggers. Someone criticizes you. You react. Someone ignores you. You react. Someone disrespects you. You react. Someone provokes you. You react. At first glance, this seems normal. But look deeper. Who is actually in control? The person initiating the trigger, or the person responding automatically? This is where emotional manipulation gains its strength. Manipulators learn what produces predictable reactions. Then they use those reactions strategically, sometimes consciously, sometimes instinctively. Either way, the result is the same. Your emotions become programmable. And programmable emotions create controllable people. Marcus Aurelius understood this danger. He constantly reminded himself that external events possess no inherent authority over his mind. Only his judgment could grant them that authority. Think about how powerful that idea is. Someone insults you. The words arrive. But before the emotional reaction occurs, there is a moment. A tiny moment, almost invisible. Within that moment lies choice. Most people never notice it. The Stoic trains himself to live inside it, because that moment is where freedom exists. Why silence terrifies manipulators? There is something fascinating about silence. It exposes people. When emotional manipulators lose access to your reactions, they often become uncomfortable. Why? Because reactions provide information. Every emotional outburst reveals something. Every defensive explanation reveals something. Every desperate message reveals something. Every angry response reveals something. Manipulators study these signals. Consciously or unconsciously, they use them to adjust strategy. But silence interrupts the flow of information. Silence creates uncertainty. Silence removes leverage. Imagine trying to move a puppet whose strings have disappeared. That is what emotional detachment feels like to someone accustomed to controlling others. Suddenly their usual methods stop working. The guilt trips fail. The provocations fail. The emotional bait fails. Because the reaction they depend upon never arrives. This does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming deliberate. Silence is powerful when it emerges from strength, not fear, not avoidance, not suppression. Strength. The strength to choose your response rather than surrendering it. And very few people possess this ability, which is why it appears almost intimidating when someone does. The hidden cost of over-explaining. One habit quietly destroys emotional power. Over-explaining. Many people constantly feel compelled to justify themselves, to defend themselves, to prove themselves, to explain themselves. Someone misunderstands them. They explain. Someone criticizes them. They explain. Someone questions them. They explain. The cycle never ends. But beneath this habit often lies something deeper. The need for validation. The need to be understood. The need to be approved. The Stoics recognized a difficult truth. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will agree with you. Not everyone will approve of you. And exhausting yourself trying to change that reality only creates suffering. A detached person understands this. They communicate clearly, but they do not beg for understanding. They state their position. Then they allow others to form their opinions. This creates an extraordinary sense of freedom, because your peace no longer depends upon controlling how others perceive you, and that is a level of independence many people never experience. The fear that makes people easy to control. At the core of most manipulation lies fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear of disapproval, fear of being forgotten. Fear creates compliance. People tolerate disrespect because they fear being alone. People ignore red flags because they fear losing connection. People remain silent because they fear conflict. People sacrifice boundaries because they fear rejection. The manipulator doesn't need to create these fears. Most people already possess them. The manipulator simply learns how to activate them. That is why emotional detachment begins with self-sufficiency, not isolation. Self-sufficiency. The ability to remain emotionally stable even when external circumstances change. The ability to survive disappointment. The ability to survive rejection. The ability to survive loss. Because once fear loses its power, manipulation loses its leverage. And that is when genuine freedom begins. The lesson of Marcus Aurelius. Imagine ruling an empire constantly threatened by war, plague, political betrayal, economic instability, death. That was the reality Marcus Aurelius faced. Yet, throughout his private writings, a remarkable pattern appears. Again and again, he returns to one central idea. Control your mind, not circumstances, not people, not outcomes. Your mind. Your circumstances remain uncertain. People remain unpredictable. Outcomes remain uncontrollable. But your judgments remain yours. This distinction formed the foundation of Stoic resilience. The average person spends enormous energy trying to control what cannot be controlled. Other people's opinions, other people's behavior, other people's choices. The Stoic redirects that energy inward, toward self-mastery, toward emotional discipline, toward perception, toward character. And this shift changes everything. Because while external power can be taken away, internal power cannot. Unless you surrender it. The moment manipulation, ENDS. Manipulation ends when dependency ends. It really is that simple. The moment someone realizes they cannot control your emotions, their influence weakens. The moment your self-worth stops depending on their approval, their power declines. The moment your peace stops depending on their behavior, their leverage disappears. This is why emotional detachment feels threatening to controlling people. They lose access. They lose influence. They lose predictability. And most importantly, they lose power. The Stoics understood that freedom always carries a cost. You may lose approval. You may lose certain relationships. You may lose the illusion of control. But what you gain is infinitely more valuable. Clarity, strength, peace, autonomy, freedom. And once experienced, these become difficult to surrender. The Stoic question that changes everything. Whenever emotional turbulence appears, ask yourself one question. What exactly am I afraid of losing? Be honest. Sometimes the answer is obvious. A relationship, an opportunity, a reputation. But often, the deeper answer hides beneath the surface. Approval, validation, security, identity, certainty. And once you identify the attachment, you identify the source of vulnerability. Because emotional suffering often follows the same path. Attachment creates fear. Fear creates dependency. Dependency creates control. Control creates suffering. Break the attachment, and the entire structure begins to collapse. This is why emotional detachment is so powerful. It attacks the root, not the symptoms. But understanding manipulation is only half the journey. Awareness alone does not create freedom. Knowledge alone does not create strength. The real question is, how do you actually become emotionally detached? How do you stop overthinking? How do you stop seeking validation? How do you stop caring about the opinions that once controlled you? How do you remain calm when someone tries to provoke you? In part 3, we'll explore the practical Stoic system for emotional detachment, the daily exercises, the mindset shifts, the mental disciplines, the ancient techniques used by Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius to build minds that remain steady in chaos. And one Stoic exercise, practiced for centuries, may completely change how you experience fear, rejection, and loss.